Good evening, everybody. Welcome to some Monday night Smite night action. I am I23 Cara Gold, joined by Zat, and lurking on production, we have none other than the legendary Judas Priestley. And boy, have we got a fixture for you this evening. It is, of course, Smite Night Season 5, Game Week 2, and we are bringing you the action from the very top division. Two teams who both won their opening fixture. It's Floppy Fennecs versus the Dancin Daffodils. And that's last time we cast together, we cast the bottom division. Now it's the top division, where I expect to see a little bit less comfort picks and a little bit more meta picks. And with that in mind, Zats, what are you expecting to see?
Well, I think the first thing to note is there are a couple of things that maybe aren't going to be picked today. It's worth mentioning that Maui is slightly bugged today. I still think that Maui is going to be a super highly prioritized pick. There are a couple of supports that you would put in that upper echelon. Otherwise, you're not going to be banning any junglers. There's just so many good ones right now. There's a couple of mid laners and a couple of supports, namely that Maui, the Athena maybe might come into it. But that's what I'm going to be expected to see as we head into the first picks and bans.
Yeah, and you make a really good point there. There are so many strong roles at the moment, so many priority picks, and yeah, it really could well go any way at this stage. We're still waiting to see exactly how the meta is particularly going to play out. But yeah, these are two teams that we're both familiar with in the Zats. We've seen these in Smite Night for a couple of seasons now, and we certainly know that whatever the meta may be at the moment, both of these teams are going to be on top of that.
Yeah, I will also say that obviously when you compare it to the last cast we did, the relay division, the lowest of the low, fantastic game by the way, take nothing away from those teams, but this I expect to see completely different. You can see these strong meta picks because you know that this caliber of player, they can bring out almost anything as long as it's strong. But what I do expect to see is perhaps some niche little picks that we're not used to. Bring out some cheese, bring out some interesting strats that the opposition maybe aren't expecting. That's going to set you up really nicely. Because remember, both these teams won their opening set. We're into week 2 now. This is going to be massive for deciding who's on top at the end of this fixture.
Of course, and it's all about bragging rights at this stage, isn't it? You've got to be top of the tree as we head towards the end of our first split. And one thing we've seen so far, Zat, in competitive play this season is the priority of these magical ADCs, and this is really coming through in this ban phase here, isn't it? With both Oleron and Kronos being taken out.
Yeah, the thing is about the magical ADCs, all of them are considered pretty strong right now. It's interesting what teams choose to ban. More often than not, I think the Oleron is likely the strongest one. I'm not surprised to see that gone. Freya, generally valued quite highly, but some teams aren't valuing it at all. The same goes with the Kronos, with the Soul. It's really up in the air at the moment as to which ones you're banning, which ones you're picking. It's hard to pin that down. We've got 2 gone already. I wonder if we'll see a Soul possibly picked up, but we've got a first pick Hebo. Still very strong, did receive a couple of nerfs, just mostly to damage, but this character probably most likely played in the jungle. The damage is ridiculous. 3 ultimates, they always meme about the Hebo. The damage coming out of it is insane. And frankly, if you get Blink on this character and get a big crushing wave in the late game, you can win a game all by yourself.
Yeah, and instantly in response to that Hebo pick comes out the Jing Wei. And that suggests that they potentially may be considering this Hebo jungle because there is that flex possibility. And that Jing Wei just gives you the safety, doesn't it? Just to avoid, like you say, getting hit with a trio of ults in a short space of time.
Yeah, I understand the pick. I suspect what they really want to do, they don't want to give too much away. It's not that Jingwei is the most highly prioritized ADC at the moment. I certainly wouldn't put her in that category, but it's very safe. There's not a lot wrong with that pick. You can get through the laning phase. Your late game is decent enough as long as you're building a bit of crit, maybe a bit of pen, kin size, that sort of thing. But you're not revealing your hand too early. You're just going with the safe standard pick. On the other hand, the Jormungandr, not quite so standard, not quite so safe. We know where this is going to go. and we know that the certain counters that can pick into it. I wouldn't be surprised if we perhaps see, maybe a Hercules or an Achilles picked to counter this Jormungandr specifically. That being said, there is a little bit of flex potential. You could put this Jormungandr in mid lane, which I think has potential, especially with the tablet being obviously very strong at the moment, especially on these aggressive poke-based guardians. I really do like that pickup. So there is some flex potential there, but we'll see how they choose to play it around it.
Yeah, and the tablet build at the moment is bringing a lot of Guardians into more unconventional roles, you'd say. We've seen it in mid, we've certainly seen it in solo. And yeah, this Jormungandr, like you say, it'd certainly be a spicy pick if it was in mid, but it also wouldn't be the most surprising thing we've seen this season so far. Also unsurprising, though, is the lock-in of the Ishtar and Thor, two gods who, it's fair to say, Zats, have had a pretty strong start to year 10 of Smite.
I did wonder if we were going to see the Thor a little bit earlier. I actually think with the sheer amount of strong junglers at the moment, there possibly isn't one that sort of rules the roost. Now, a lot of people would argue maybe Thor is in that conversation. Najar is also in that conversation. You can see that was banned very early on. I think it's always difficult to play into Thor, but I always say, as long as you have good vision, and I'm talking about in these late game team fights around Fire Giant, if you've got a nice radius of wards and you're playing within that circle, as long as you've got vision on this Thor, it actually makes it really difficult to land a good Anvil of Dawn, because if you're aware of it, it's nearly impossible to engage. So what we're actually looking for is maybe a bit of a snowball through the early game using this semi-global ultimate. But after that, you're going to rely on your solo laner, on your support to do more of the engaging, and then try and pick up some kills on the back line.
Yeah, and the Athena pick is another one we've seen have a strong start to year 10. And what this does, that I think this early on in the phase, is Athena combos so well into so many mid laners that this has really opened the door for a mid pick that it's going to be very difficult, and it has been difficult for the order side to ban out. And the Agni, I assume, is banned for exactly that reason, because Agni and Athena pair extremely well together.
Again, the problem is there are so many good mages right now that, as you say, combo with that confound. It's very predictable. You dash in, you hit the taunt, you kind of know it's coming. Of course, she has to charge it up with that lengthy animation, but it's still very simple, but it is difficult to play around if you're not ready for it. And as I say, there are a number of mages you can pair this with. I think Yu Huang, Merlin is still on the table. So many good options. As long as you're building either a tablet book build that can help you scale and burn tanks into the late game, you're going to be fine either way. I just think, looking at the draft so far, they've got such a good team fight, whereas you look on the order side, they are a little bit more dive-oriented. You're looking for this Hebo, for this Tiamat, this Terra, and this Thor to be diving on the backline. I expect to see a blink from the Hebo. It's going to be tough to keep the backline alive, and they don't have a lot of peel. Jingwei isn't so concerned with that, but this Merlin that they've locked in, once you force that flicker, very susceptible to the sheer amount of dive that's coming out. So that is a little bit of concern to me, but Merlin's still very strong, great tablet stacker, great book builder. I'm very happy with this pick. They just need to watch how much that dive is and whether the Merlin can survive long enough to get off the sheer amount of shred damage in that kit.
Yeah, and you have to say, there's a lot of aggression in that draft with Hebo and Thor, and these are not going to be giving this Merlin an easy ride, are they? That Anvil of Dawn, I think you can almost predict already that there's a lot of them that are going to be raining down on Merlin's head, and Athena is going to have to be on point here and keep this backline alive, because if you can shut down the Merlin in this comp, are they going to be struggling for team fight damage?
That is one concern for me. I think Athena, generally, you do want to be playing as the aggressor, as the initiator. But if there isn't much peel coming out, and I say again, Athena has one form of hard CC. Once that's gone, there is not much peel coming out aside from the shell, perhaps. I am very concerned about this. I think you have so many tools to kill this Merlin, to force that flicker nice and early. It's going to be about very careful positioning for infrared on this Merlin pick. We'll see how it goes. And I think if they can get through the early game and get to that latter stage, perhaps having taken a few Gold Furies, using their global ultimates, that will help them as well. They stand a decent chance in these team fights, and it could go either way at that stage. But in the early game, expect the Fennecs to be running the game with this Thor, with this Hebo, with this Tiamat.
Well, we know the quality of these two sides. As we said, they are currently sat top of the tree in Smite Night Season 5. As we head into game number 1, let's hope it lives up to the hype that we have done for this fixture. And Zat, we've spoke a lot on cast already this season about the start, and I'm going to ask you again, for those who may not have tuned into some of our early casts this season, do you still a fan of this start, or like me, are you on the side that's a bit clumsy?
I think both starts are clumsy, but unfortunately they are completely necessary. The ability to hit level 2 shortens the laning phase for starters, and the laning phase really can define your entire game, especially if you've got this, what I'd say is a pretty weak early game matchup with this Jingwei and with this Athena. Certainly compared to this Ishtar, whose level 1 clear is probably the best in the game of any ADC. It just means that you're able to get through that very early stage scot-free. And it means you can get away with some of these perhaps more later game oriented picks. It's necessary. We do see a couple of adjustments, but certainly in this game, both teams have gone for that same start. They've cleared all their buffs. Happy to get to lane a little bit later because, of course, the other team is doing exactly the same thing. So you're not losing anything.
No, and one thing we have seen a lot this season is the fighting early on, and the Thor, quite surprisingly, actually is over in the solo lane. We didn't even consider that at the start, as the double tap does land on, and going in hard is Panvich, looking for the kill, maybe takes one too many tower hits, though, and looking to punish is Zero, and they do get first blood, and that was an overzealous Thor looking for an early kill onto Yorn.
I'm not really sure what the thinking is there. Even a double tap and hitting the spin, you do hit everything, but fails under a little bit of pressure in this mid lane.
Yeah, fails in big trouble, and Dancin Daffodils look to get second kill on the board early on, but they do! Big knockup, but Infrared does pick up fails. Archie Baker is not in a safe position, though, but that monkey uses his leap effectively and escapes the clutches of lurking Farrakirk on the Tiamat. And that is a pretty good start for Dancin Daffodils.
Very, very good. You are kind of gifted it with that play from Panvich. As I said, you're never getting that kill in a million years, and you've actually absolutely given up lane pressure. It's a good fight, and also you expect to see this Hebo focused. Does have the beads early, not the blink, which I think makes a lot of sense. There is a home bat ult and Athena taunts on the table, so I understand that more passive choice. But naturally, on this Hebo, you are going to want to stack up. You're going to take a while to get online, get this, what I assume is going to be a Book of Thoth. Stacking in the jungle is a little bit easier in year 10, so I don't mind that pickup. What it does mean is that when you compare it to Archie Baker on this Humbats, you're going to be a lot more aggressive in the early game because you know there's a Hebo who can't react to this.
No, and one thing of Season 10 is you get early jungle ganks, and Zola is about to feel the wrath of this.
Lovely.
As in comes the Humbat, it's a good backflip, but it's not good enough, as Archie Baker gets a third kill on the board for Dancin Daffodils early on. And well, has this jungler found value in the first 3 minutes?
It's exactly as we said. The Humbat's clear is exceptional, certainly compared to the Hebo, and Archie Baker is making the absolute most of that. That is matchup knowledge, knowing that you have the freedom to roam. You've already taken down the jungler once in that mid lane fight, and this is kind of what has defined year 10. Junglers have so much farm to do, but they also have so much time at the moment in the jungle, and it just means you can gank whenever you like and you don't miss out on farm. And it just means that as a side laner, solo lane, and especially when you're in the duo lane, for me there's an invisible line, and that is the halfway mark of your lane. If you are stepped over it and you do not have vision on the enemy jungler anywhere on the map, it doesn't matter where they were last seen, if you do not have vision on the enemy jungler, they could come and gank you, and there's nothing you can do about it at this early stage. Junglers are dominating in that regard, and I think it's partly because these side laners are not actually respecting the rotation power of these junglers in the early game. As we do see an ult forced out from Zero, full pressure, you're still going to have it despite that first blood onto Zero. You're happy with that trade. I am intrigued, actually. I do want to point out this Vampiric Shroud for Zero. I think it's not an item that we see a lot. I think it's a very stat-efficient item, but you compare it to Sands of Time, or more often than not, the Conduit Gem. which I think is a really great pickup on the Jormungandr. You proc it so easily, helps you clear lane. This gives you a little bit more sustain, and I perhaps understand that into a Thor, who again struggles to clear in the early game, so Zero perhaps feeling they can get away with it a little bit more, but now they've got that first blood, they've got through the very, very early stages, and now Zero can actually look to start getting aggressive with this poke and start stacking up this Tablet of Destinies, which is so easy on Jormungandr.
Yeah, I was going to say straight into the tablet build for Zero. We mentioned how Guardians this season, they can pick up tablet and they can play aggressive, oppressive roles like solo and even mid sometimes, and that's exactly the way Zero has gone. But look what is happening over in the dual lane. Once again, there was a gank happening.
Ooh,
Kino does get the beads out of Zolat, and that is going to make Archie Baker cast their eyes over this way. There is the ultimate, but Zolat uses that immunity to escape. Well played from Zolat. They fended off Archie Baker for the first time this game, but something tells me that's not going to be the last time they visit that lane.
And quite right, the beads are down. Very predictable again to focus down this Ishtar. If you can cancel that dash, and we've already seen it work wonders once already in this left-hand side lane, you need to be a little bit more cognizant of that Athena, that preemptive strike. You can hear it coming from a mile away. Save your dash if you know the Athena's that close. Just save the jolt. Save it for half a second, and then you've got it up. You can get away from the Humbats. You don't have to beads. And wow, that's a steal from Minakino. Credit there. This Athena is already roaming across the map using those globals, as you love to see. Dancing Daffodils are really controlling the game at this stage, which is surprising to me when you look at the other comp we were saying in picks and bans. Floppy Fennecs could well snowball this game out of control, but at the moment, if anyone's going to snowball this game, it's looking to be the Dancing Daffodils.
Yeah, and they've already 2 buff steals less than 6 minutes in. They stole purple with the first gank in left. They've stole blue with the first gank in right. And they're the frustrating early steals that just put you behind annoyingly enough for it to start to become an issue in a couple of minutes' time. You have to say good presence so far from Archie Baker. I wouldn't say it's panic stations quite yet for Floppy Fennecs. Quite the opposite, actually, as it is. Like you say, you've expected that comp to come on live perhaps a little bit later into the game. But Dancing Daffodils, good start. Archie Baker been all over the map so far, and that's how you have to play jungle this season.
Yep, 100% agree. I like what I've seen so far. Now we're starting to get to that stage. You've got a sizable gold lead, 1,000 gold lead already at 7 minutes, which is pretty nice at this stage. It's whether you can turn that into actual objectives. Can you get these early gold furies? Maybe look to press some tier 1 towers. You've certainly wiped off a number of bastions off the board. You've got those to take down in the early game. That's going to help you expand this gold lead. We see a little bit of jostling, but in fact, the jostling is onto Infrared, who a nice stun from Farrakrook as well. But again, this is kind of all you see in mid lane. Bit of a slap fight, bit of a poke battle, especially with both tablets online. You're looking at getting these bastions down and just getting these tablets stacked nice and early. And I like to see that both mid laners have opted to go for it first. Otherwise, it just takes that little bit too long to get it sorted.
Yeah, and we've already seen Anvil of Dawn coming down there on the right side. Didn't quite have enough to finish Zero off, but look, even at this early stage of the game, look how quickly that Jormungandr health was chipped away. And when you look at the build that Pambich is going on this Forzats by picking up the Runeforged Hammer, by going tablet first on Yorm, you do potentially leave yourself not quite as tanky as you would perhaps expect against your lane opponent.
It is the trade-off that you're probably willing to make on a Guardian like Jormungandr. We've seen in previous seasons where this character was so dominant, you could go these pretty mage-oriented builds more than anything. You can get these Divine Ruins and these kind of sort of hybrid items, but really they are power items. You can do damage on this character because it's so inherently safe. Proxying is a thing of the past this year, but we've seen it in previous seasons where you can just go and proxy a wave and then ult out for absolutely free because you just can't keep up with that Jormungandr, of course. It's a trade-off that you're willing to make, and I think it's perfectly fine as long as you don't get caught out by this Thor, who is going to be swinging with this Runeforged Hammer, of course, getting that bonus damage once you stun that target. And, of course, that does apply to the ultimate as well, but applications in lane are not so good. It's perfectly fine. It's a nice stat stick. You're not committing either way into one type of protections, which I like, into this Jormungandr Humbats combo. But we see more aggression from Panvich. The invade is a little bit late. Actually, the Batsol's come out.
Fear no evil knocks Panvich into danger, get pulled back in as well, but it's Zero who takes the majority of the damage. They are looking no ult for the escape, and Jacob picks that one up, but Infrared is over here too, and they clean away fails in retaliation. A lot of no members here. Jacob is high and dry in the right side jungle. Only 3 members of Dancin Daffodils around, not going to follow with the pursuit, but Farakirk is over here now as well. This is a full health Tiamat, and they have got damage to give out, but it looks like this one is just going to slowly dissipate, and as kills trade out there, Zach, you have to think Floppy Fennecs will be glad to get their first one on the board and not leave too much for an overextend into right side.
Yeah, that's fair. They've got a kill onto the board. That is important. You're a little bit slow on the blue buff invade, and that is, to be fair, credit to Archie Baker and Zero. They were spot on with that timing, and that just means that invade doesn't happen. After that, it feels like they've made that rotation. They need to get something. That's why they're willing to go pretty deep, and in fact, we saw fails ulting in to try and get that kill to Zero, which they do eventually get, but it costs the life of your jungler. And at this stage, you don't want this Hebo falling too far behind. Does have the Book of Thoth online, but really you're wanting to get this stacked up and not fight for the next 5-10 minutes. Just get your build online. That's a pretty bad look if you get your Hebo behind early. What I will say is, yes, they have got a kill onto the board. They've taken some momentum away. They've got a good pickup onto Zero, which is important. This Jormungandr, it's nice to keep them down, especially with this more power-oriented build that we're seeing, and probably into a Book of Thoth as well. It's nice to keep the Jormungandr down just that little bit.
Yeah, this is not a Jormungandr that has come here to take damage. With those first 3 items, they are here to do damage, but so is Panvich. And not having the protection on line 0, they are going to take chunks from this Berserker barrage. And we actually see Dancin Daffodils steal away the first big objective of the map there, right under the noses from both us and Floppy Fennecs. And that was a steal in the night, Zats.
And that's exactly what we were talking about, these early objectives. It's all well and good having a gold lead, having some levels in mid lane, in solo lane, in jungle, but you need to turn that into actual map presence, into map pressure. They've already got the Pyromancer off the map nice and early, pretty much as soon as that spawned. That's good recognition there. You don't normally see Pyromancers taken out at this stage, and now look what they're doing. They're coming straight over for this Gold Fury, and you know what? They're coming here, they're showing face, but they don't have to commit to it. All they need to do is make the Fennecs dedicate some resources, because they're already in the lead. They're not losing as much as the Fennecs are by making that rotation. So I like that play. You've always got the threat of the Merlin Shred, so you have to be super on time, especially if you're Jacob on this turret. You have to be on point with these timings, because you give the Dancing Daffodils any slight window and they will take it with this Merlin burst.
Yeah, we've seen that already. I mean, how big was the window for that Pyromancer? You're talking minuscule, like a prison window, and they managed to sneak through and steal that one away. Haven't seen too much action over in the duo lane, which is actually a bit surprising so far, because Season 10 is usually where we see all of the action going on. But aside from those early ganks, it has died down a little bit, and you have to say Zolat will probably be pretty thankful for that.
Yeah, doing a perfectly fine job, given that obviously dropped an early kill to the Archie Baker gank. Jingwei is very, very difficult to outfarm at the best of times, as we see, again, more action fails very low on this Hebo once again. But luckily, it's just Minokino. Archie Baker just a little bit too far away to make anything happen, but guess what? They're going to go for this blue buff invade. It's yet more pressure on the side of the Dancing Daffodils.
Yeah, and they're not the only ones aware of this blue buff invade. There's lots of people now in birds. There's a Fear No Evil. It's a big one. And unfortunately, Panvich is going to have to get out of this fight. Doesn't have the hammer to escape. But what they do have is Terra stood there like a bodyguard saying, get off my solo laner. And considering that was a blue buff invade that could have gone pretty badly, Floppy Fennecs will be pretty glad that Panvich got away from that one.
Yeah, no beads yet online for Panvich. I would expect to see that. It is now level 12, and in fact, yes, has just purchased the beads in base. Didn't have that online yet, and that's good recognition. Again, you're using that Humbats ult aggressively. You're using it on cooldown. You've got 30% CDR already with this Jotun's Wrath and this Hydra's Lament. You need to use that. You need to leverage that as often as you can. Good recognition. They don't quite have the damage at this stage. That Thor is very tanky, and again, not due to prots, but due to a bit more health than you'd expect at this stage of the game with that Runeforged Hammer. It's a good idea. They don't lose anything for it. Again, that Bat Salt is on a pretty low cooldown at this stage of the game, certainly when you compare it to Fails on the other end. They're going to keep going. It's certainly not out of control yet. The Fennecs are more than happy to keep slow playing this. They know they need to get to late game with this Terror, who really doesn't come online for another 10-15 minutes, to be frank. I like that we see Jacob has actually gone for this Lotus Sickle, not opting for the Prophetic Cloak, which we have seen quite a lot of in this season so far, but actually this Lotus Sickle is a really nice pickup. It's obviously what Lotus Crown used to be, but now it gives more health instead of it's not such a dedicated defense item. It's got a lot more utility on it with the movement speed, with the CDR. It's a great early pickup for support with healing, and it actually means that you can kind of get through this early game a little bit safer than you normally would on this Terror, who traditionally does struggle a bit in these first 10-15 minutes. Your damage is low, your setup is predictable, your ult is not doing anything without any levels, without any scaling. I do like this pickup. I am surprised with the lack of the Prophetic, certainly on both teams. I think Athena uses that item really, really well. Of course, the reach autos on her passive do proc Prophetic Cloak. Doing that once every 8 seconds, you're going to stack that up pretty quickly, but instead going for some more defensive Spirit Robe. But hang on, Panvich is in duo lane.
He is indeed. He's up into the Anvil of Dawn. Jingwei zips away, though, and that's exactly the kind of mobility and escapability that we thought this Jingwei may have been picked for. The Gold Fury is being looked at, but Mino Kino is nothing more than an observer to this going down. But look who is lurking on the backline. Archie Baker does have the ultimate available should they choose to use it. This is not a safe Gold Fury. Both teams jockeying around. Looks like it might be dropped, is dropped, and that was much ado about nothing.
You can tell that this is the top division of the Smite Night League. Both teams play that very, very well. The Fennecs decide, well, hang on, we've just forced the beads from Veyron, we've forced the ultimate. We've got a bit of position here because Panvich has made this early rotation. So they decide, okay, we're going to pull this Gold Fury, we're going to posture around it. And they're really looking to bait in, ideally, Archie Baker on the backside. They have decent vision, in fact, very good vision all over. And they look to kind of get a pick, and then maybe you can look at Gold Fury. But the Dancin Daffodils, they recognise the fact that it's not a hard commit. The burn is very, very slow with this Tiamat that isn't quite online yet. And this Terror, of course, again, very, very slow. They're fine with that, and they don't commit too hard. They just wait, let Jacob take some poke, and actually, in the end, they lose nothing for it. Nothing ventured, nothing gained. And now we end up on the other side of the map, posturing around this Pyromancer. Again, it's all around clean objective play, and both teams are being very, very careful, very, very smart. But it's very fun to watch how they posture and position around each other. It's like a giant clock. They're all rotating around with each other. And at some point, someone's going to have to make an aggressive play. Someone's going to have to commit an ult, or, more importantly, someone is going to step out of position. And with the quality and caliber of these two teams, that will be punished immediately if you're not careful.
Yeah, and Archie Baker is looking to make that punishment onto Farakirk, but they quickly dash away, and Dancin Daffodils, recognising they forced away the mid lane and potentially see an opportunity here to group around for Gold Fury. But as soon as I say that, of course they dissipate. And that's we saw quite a frantic start to the game, didn't we, with a couple of kills in the first couple of minutes. Now it's sort of evened out a bit. Does this favour one side over the other, as Veyron once again has to use the Jingwei maneuverability to escape? The Defender of Olympus is over here, but it may not be enough. Fails, unfortunately, the only catches an Aegis, but Zolat finishes that one away, and Archie Baker punishes the jungler for their overcommit, and this fight is nowhere near over, as Mino Kino is now next on the menu, and Panvish snaps that one up, rotating all the way over from solo lane. And now Floppy Fennecs are looking for the counter objective play. They force back the Dancin Daffodils, and they are the ones who are going to set up for Gold Fury.
And that is the power of the Thor from that solo lane. Used the teleport, rotated over, and that Anvil of Dawn, very well timed. Fails is a bit unlucky with the Aegis and Infrared. Getting very pressured.
Thought they were going for Gold Fury, but they've gone for Infrared instead, and they are stuck between a rock and a hard place. Has to use the Aegis, but it's not going to be enough as Panvich gets another kill. And we talk about value in rotations. Boy, did they get value from leaving that solo lane there.
It's just so hard to deal with. The base damage with this Gladiator Shield, this Rune Forge, you're getting a Warrior's Act proc for free. There's a lot coming from this Thor right now, and while Jormungandr is kind of matching that rotation, certainly keeping up in farm, is doing quite a bit of damage, certainly, but you just can't match the power of a semi-global stun, a ton of damage onto any backliner that you want. Absolutely melted through Veyron with the help of Fails, who again is diving very, very deep with these crushing waves, but is willing to make that trade. That's kind of what Hebo does. If you are able to trade 1-for-1, it's kind of worth it because the damage you're getting off is huge.
Yeah, and that damage is only going to get huger as the game goes on. They did start the book build, which obviously is going to delay things just a little bit in that jungle. But as everybody knows who's played against Hebo at any level, once they get alive and cooking in that late game, the damage they can put out in an instant is absolutely terrifying. The Dancing Daffodils will want to delay that as long as possible and get as far ahead as possible as they can.
Yeah, I wonder if they need to perhaps play around this Yorm a little bit more, maybe even just by adjusting over to this solo lane, this Pyromancer a little bit more. As long as you're not giving up Gold Fury for free, you're naturally making it a little bit easier for Zero to impact these fights. Because when you're on the opposite side of the map, it's always going to be much quicker and more efficient for a Thor to get into the fight than a Jormungandr is. That ultimate is very slow to charge up, and while it does give you quite a long range to play with, it's just so slow compared to the Thor. So we need to see them play around that, either by rotating this Jormungandr earlier than the Thor, and to be fair, Pamvich has done a great job of doing that, or
here he goes. Pamvich has come over. There's the Anvil of Dawn straight onto Infrared. Does use the beads to escape from the stun. The follow-up damage is not quite there from Jacob. Defender of Olympus used though by Mino Kino just to give them extra bit of protection. That was a big ultimate to have off the table. Now Zero is looking to get involved. This Jormungandr has been cooking for a while now, and they're looking to dish out the damage they've been saving up. Dancing Daffodils grouped up around mid lane. Floppy Fennecs just about escape. It looks like this one is going to dissipate, and this Gold Fury fight has been looming for a couple of minutes now. Surely it's living a charmed life.
It really is. And again, it's all about this very careful, very sensible positioning. It's really high-level stuff, honestly. We're back to even now, and that reflects the way this game is slightly turning in terms of its momentum. It's starting to feel like the Fennecs are getting online, but here's a change of momentum. Bats has ulted in.
It is indeed, and Zola has to use everything to escape from that one. Beads to escape the Fear No Evil, and that is going to be a red flag for the rest of the Dancing Daffodils, knowing that immunity is down for Zola. They look to capitalise quickly on this one, though. They are going to go for the Gold Fury. Fails is here, and if anyone can steal, Hebo can steal. Dancing Daffodils do manage to secure it, though, but Floppy Fennecs are looking to capitalise on the members who are low on health. Anvil of Dawn onto 3! Huge ultimate from the jungler into the backline. Leaves 2 extremely low. Mino Kino solo, and so is Infrared as well, and Zolak cleans that one away, and the Floppy Fennecs chained a Gold Fury for 2 members of the Dancing Daffodils, and that was well played by the Fennecs.
Yeah, very well done. It's that eternal question of, well, we can commit to this Gold Fury, but what are we going to lose in response? And that's what the really good teams do. They recognise that an objective steal, fine, if it's on the cards, you can go for it. But what's actually more important is winning the fight afterwards, because you're tanking an objective. They are taking a ton of damage. The Fennecs are pretty low, and they are actually going to go in to try and get a response. Fear No Evil.
With the Fear No Evil onto Falkirk does a huge amount of damage, but there isn't any follow-up from any other members of the Dancing Daffodils. The Floppy Fennecs rotated back over just to give strength in numbers. Dancing Daffodils, of course, only have 3 alive at the time. The 2 who passed just after the Gold Fury are now back on the table. And this fight is looking to dissipate, but no, maybe not. As Mino Kino looks for a big taunt in onto Zola. Obviously doesn't have the beads from the engage on left a short while ago. But the Floppy Fennecs took a couple of towers in that last fight, and that's not a bad trade for losing Gold Fury.
And that's exactly what we were talking about. They won the fight, they got a couple of picks, not quite worth it, so they end up committing for that tier 1 tower as well, in both mid and dual lane. I like that. It makes it more worthwhile. We're seeing the gold swing back and forth. Now it favours the Fennecs, even with that Pyromancer going down. I mean, it's 500 gold in it. There's really nothing to call between the two. However, it does feel, I was saying before, that Bats initiation in the left, it felt like the Fennecs were actually the ones being the aggressors, they were being the initiators, and that's because of the presence that Pamvich was offering. Now Zero pretty low.
Dawn looking to punish Zero once again, and look at the
No.
damage that can come out. Does have the World Devourer available though, and they skittle away. Not the first time they've had to use it defensively. Fire
Interesting.
Giant has been started up here. Are the Floppy Fennecs looking to steal this one away, or is it just a bait? Mino Kino is on hand and will be informing the rest of the Daffodils what is going down in this Fire Giant pit. What may be going down is the Fire Giant itself, but the Daffodils arrive on scene now. Floppy Fennecs recognize that. Archie Baker engages, gets a huge hook, but takes so much damage in the process. They are going to fall in the backline unless they can get away very quickly. Jacob falls, but Archie Baker does manage to escape. The Dancin Daffodils steal a kill away there and get them to drop the Fire Giant. That is a big trade. There's a couple of members low on health. If the Fennecs look to re-engage here, Fire Giant may be easy pickings. That one looks like it has dissipated. And that was a really good counter-engage from the Daffodils.
Yeah, pretty early to be pulling that, and again, they recognise that. They know that they're just kind of baiting. Zola is going to skittle on out with the jolt. It's a great ult from Archie Baker, and they're a little unfortunate not to pick up that kill. That Humbat's getting very, very low, but again, these Fear No Evils are so impactful, and they're going to go on fails.
They are indeed. Archie Baker looking to get that one. Doesn't have the Fino Weave available. Failed, just about escapes. Anvil of Dawn is up in the sky though, and who is the target? Of course, it's Merlin in the backline, but that's a huge taunt. But it's not going to be enough as Infrared goes down to Pamvich once again, and they are looking to punish Pamvich for that one. But he's got the hammer to escape, and Veyron falls in the backline as Farrakirk gets the retaliation kill, looking to secure Mino Kino as well. Zolat picks up Archie Baker while all that is going on, and the Fennecs with 3 kills on the board, and now looking to put pressure on this mid lane.
Madness, absolute madness, and that all stems from they start this engage onto fails, and I actually think, yeah, that's a great target. Get this Hebo out of the fight early. No Aegis, still have the beads available, but didn't have to use them. It starts so well, but they end up overextending just that little bit too much, and again, it's Pamvich. It's Pamvich being the impact player. This Thor solo is just so difficult to deal with now. Surely, Zero doesn't steal this.
Of the Sentry if it does come off, but it doesn't. Farrakirk gets Zero, and the Fennecs get the Fire Giant as well, and that's a big couple of minutes for the Fennecs. That, as not only do they get the Fire Giant a couple of kills, they got a gold lead, and now they're going to run it towards that right side Phoenix.
It just feels like they're giving too much space to Pamvich and co. They need to actually find this Thor nice and early with some good warding, with some aggressive positioning, and making sure that you're not getting caught unawares by these Thor ults, which it looks to be the case every time. They're not ready, this Thor ult, and that's what Thor loves to do. And actually, Anvil's Dawn going to go up in the air, just zoning them away, and that means this Phoenix is free.
Absolutely free. The Anvil of Dawn was enough of a deterrent to keep all of those backliners away. Talk about passive guard in there, pushing people away purely through fear. They get the right side Phoenix, and Floppy Fennecs are now going to regroup, and they're going to be looking to take it down left lane. And Zats, about 5 minutes ago, you said the momentum was starting to swing. Well, now it's fully swung in the way of the Fennecs.
Yeah, I think what they need to do now, if you're the Daffodils, you've obviously lost quite a lot of gold now. You've lost FG, you've lost the Phoenix. The base is open. That's really, really key, and they're going to have to be aware of those 5 minions now. They've lost map pressure. They are very much behind now, and it's tough to fight into this. You don't really have enough damage to lock down this Thor. If you're able to get the beads out, perhaps that you can play around that with the Humbat ult, with the Confound again. You do have enough follow-up, I think, but Pamvich is living so long in these fights, getting so much impact off these Anvil of Dawns, and again, they are just not ready for it, and you have to be more aware of that. You have to be warding properly. You need vision. You need calls. Thor's up in the air, and then you need to do that very tricky play of grouping up just enough that you're ready for when the Thor lands. You can all collapse in quickly enough to shut him down, but you don't want to be too grouped up because you're just giving Thor a 4-5 man dunk if you're not careful. It's so difficult to play around, especially when you're behind. They don't have a lot of tools to play around that. Veyron is not really able to hit anyone, certainly not going to do any damage to Thor with this crit build. Does have the dominance online, that's going to help a little bit, but it just feels like there's not much damage of any significance coming from the Daffodils at the moment, because Infrared UK is not able to get enough sustained damage onto this Thor because he's just so mobile, and they're not locking him down quite as effectively as you'd like. But now They're grouping up. They've got plenty of time still on this FG. They can look for these other two Phoenixes. And just need to wait for fire minions perhaps to pour in down that right-hand side. They've got position. They don't need to panic. They don't need to rush this. They can take this as slowly as they like, wait for the opportunity, and now they're going to push in.
Bambich is not going to wait, though. They engage heavily, but they do get repealed. Archie Baker takes quite a lot of damage, has to use the beads as well. They are going to escape, but Zeros is looking to get damage onto this backline with Jormungandr in a way that only he knows best. And the Fennecs do take quite a lot of poke damage there, don't quite get the bird. And that wall does crash through infrared, does quite a lot of damage as well. But look at the HP 5 regeneration from the Fire Giant, the healing from the Terror. This is not something the Dancing Daffodils can withhold for too long, because that middle bird is living a charmed life, especially when Pambich is getting double tap damage like that. Archie Baker takes a huge amount of damage over the wall from Farakirk, and they have to retreat, and Dancing Daffodils are like a conveyor belt at the moment. Back to base, back to defend. They're just going one after another. Big damage coming out though here onto Zola. They are going to have to be pushed away, and Dancing Daffodils, the middle Phoenix is hanging on by its last feather, but they may just have done enough for now. Not too long left on the Fire Giant. This has been a great defense by the Daffodils so far, but they're going to have to do this for a few more times if they want to keep this bird alive.
Yeah, FG's about to respawn. They can't keep pushing this. Health bars are low. Pambich is going to go up in the air. They want so low again. They're going to push in now for this Phoenix.
Amazingly timed airstrike there from Veyron to escape the Anvil of Dawn. The Fear No Evil does push a couple of members alive. And this Phoenix, how many lives has this Phoenix got? Because it's still alive. Pamage gets pulled in, and Zero manages to chase down Jacob. Fails, punishes that one though. Pamage does manage to back away, and I have seen some defenses in my time, Zat, but I have to say, as far as middle bird defenses go, that was pretty good from the Dancing Daffodils.
And honestly, I don't really know how they were able to do that. They come out of that with right Phoenix is going to be saved as well. That's absolutely massive. All three birds are up. They are now in the position where they can defend this fire as long as they clear this last wave coming down the right side. They're in a great position here. If they get aggressive positioning, they get lots of wards out in the enemy jungle. If they maybe catch out Zola if he's not careful.
Zola living dangerously there on the edge of that Fire Giant pit. As Dancing Daffodils have recognised that they potentially have got an opportunity here. They have disengaged slightly though, as the Floppy Fennecs re-engage around. And this next Fire Giant this could go either way. The game is back in the balance with two Phoenixes online, slowly taking their health back up. The Dancing Daffodils, that was some defence. And this next Fire Giant fight is pretty big, because if it goes the way of the Daffodils, they're right back in this.
Yeah, too right, and this is all to play for. They will absolutely step up to defend this. It's 30 minutes, and it's now EFG. That is all to play for, and I think that they really do have a chance of this. The goal deficit is honestly not as bad as it could be. They've got Phoenixes up. They can really have a go at defending this, and it's almost back to an even game state. I still think that it's pretty criminal that Phoenix didn't go down, right? Especially when you look at the amount of sustain they had, as you mentioned, with the HP 5, with the Terror heals. They also had, I think, 2 or 3 4 ults in that entire engagement on that middle Phoenix, and I don't know how they didn't manage to get it down. I put a lot of it down to Merlin, obviously very, very valuable in defending Phoenixes. You could just clear from a mile away. Got that Divine Ruin online, so you can proc that very, very easily. That's going to help you just that little bit. And I think Zero as well is doing a lot of damage with these ultimate shots. And it can feel like, oh, well, it's just a Yorma, I don't need to juke it. But especially with this build, it can surprise you how much damage that does, especially if you get by 2 or 3 consecutive hits. It's all to play for now. It's right back in the balance, and I honestly couldn't call it either way. I think the team that goes aggressive first and the team that throws all them ultimates out first will probably win the fight, as long as they're not tanking FG too much. That's what we're going to look out for now. We're looking for either Pamvich to ult first, or we're looking for a big Fear No Evil from Archie Baker.
Yeah, and these Fire Giant fights often come down to that, don't they, at this stage of the game, when you've got 2 evenly matched sides, 2 high-quality sides. As we mentioned, this is Division 1. What it takes here is either a really good play from one team or an unfortunate mistake from the other, and then it all comes in to a big crescendo fight around the Fire Giant pit. Dancing Daffodils are here in numbers. Floppy Fennecs are here in numbers. This one is teetering on the edge of a epic battle in this Fire Giant pit. Jacob HL steps forward, gets pulled in Is that the mistake we were talking about?
Damage check.
No, Veyron takes a lot of damage, a huge amount of damage, as Fails cleans them off the map and up to the sky. Once again goes Panvich. Where's this Anvil of Dawn looking to land? It lands on Mino Kino and they get pushed away. Archie Baker uses the Fear No Evil, but they fear the sight in front of them as 4 members of the Fennecs close in. They get 4 kills on the board. They are running it down mid, and that they are looking to end the game number 1.
You don't need Fire Giant because the Phoenixes are so low. You've got a 5v1 for 30 seconds tops. This is gone. This is game over. They played it really, really cleanly. Once they got online in that mid-game, all the credit to them. I'm surprised that they won that fight so cleanly. But again, it came down to who used those ultimates first. Panvich gets another great ultimate onto the backline. They're able to pick off the Veyron and Minikino very, very early on. Zero's going to fall. Game 1 to the Fennecs, and it's been so clean for them. Very, very impressive from the Fennecs.
Yeah, and we mentioned at the start how as the game went on, this Hebo jungle is going to become more and more of a factor. And that last fight there, picking up 4 kills for the Floppy Fennecs, allowing them to just get that pressure and push it down mid. And it was a close game for a long part of it, but it all came down to the quality of the engages from Panvich.
Yeah, I think we saw in that final fight how much of an impact Panvich was going to make. Really, it was the 20 minutes before that Thor was really dominating. But what we actually saw at that Fire Giant, we had a big commit onto Jacob, who I said it was a damage check. There was not enough, frankly, to ever kill Jacob. And then we saw again Panvich hit that Thor wall, hit that double tap, and Veyron's already down to 30%, and it's just cleanup crew from that. A nice water spout as well from Fail to help finish that up. We talked about this Hebo, how they can finish a game off with one big ability in the late game. That was it. It was the water spout onto Veyron before able to get up into that airstrike. It was very, very well played, despite the fact this Hebo was pretty much a non-factor for 90% of that game. And all credit must, in that case, go to the teammates as well. Farrakrick, flawless in that game. Massive damage coming out from this Tiamat. No deaths on the board. Zola did a great job. Panvich was great. Jacob was great. They played it cleanly enough in the early game, and they didn't fall too far behind. And once they got online with that late game, thanks to the impact from Panvich and Farrakrick and Jacob, Fails started to get into the game. And once they got into those narrow, scrappy jungle fights and started engaging early, it never actually looked close, and credit goes to them and their draft, and they executed it really, really nicely.
They did, and as the game went on, Fails came more into it, but the Dancin Daffodils will be looking to come more into this set in game number 2. Do not go anywhere. We'll be heading to a break, and we'll be right back. Welcome back, everybody. It is Monday night. It is Smite night. I am I23 iCara Gold, joined by Zats. Of course, we have Judas on production as well. And we are ready for game number 2 between Floppy Fennecs and Dancin Daffodils. Fennecs took game number 1 in a fairly convincing performance after the mid-game. And Zats, if you're the Daffodils, is there anything that you're potentially looking at banning away here? I'm thinking particularly the Thor.
It's got to be where you're looking at. I think a Thor in general is never a bad ban. It has to be said. I think, a lot of teams are considering it as a top ban in the jungle. We haven't seen it so much flex in the solo, but honestly, with the way it outperformed, it might be better to just get it out off of Panvich, because that was a dominant performance from start to finish. Even with a tier 1 tower dive at 1 minute, that kind of set the tone. Even though he didn't get the first blood, just set the tone for the entire game with the aggression that was coming out from this Thor all the way through the game. I really love to see it. The Daffodils will not like to see that again. I'm sure they will ban it away this time.
Well, let's see if that is the case as we head into picks and bans. And as you say, Pand is so aggressive right from the off there. It will be amazing if that is allowed through again. It was so impactful, not something we've seen a lot of Thor solo. I've always teetered on the idea of a Thor solo, but I've never really seen it properly come into fruition, apart from maybe the last sort of few months or so. But that is not the case as we see a Guan Yu banned away. And the solo lane was so impactful in that game, wasn't it? Not just from Panvich, but also, you don't want to criticize, but the Jormungandr didn't really work for me.
No, I think when you compare it to a Thor, it's always going to struggle that little bit more. The damage is fine, but you're not able to really kill a backliner like Thor is able to, even with the similar kind of hybrid builds that both solo laners were coming out with. It's never going to be quite enough, and I wonder if we do need to see a bit of adjustment for that. Either if you want to pick the Jormungandr again, you need to get a jungler that can kind of dive the backline a little bit better than a Humbats can. Humbats is looking to drop the Fear No Evil in the middle of a team fight, whereas actually if you've got a jungler like the Hebo, for example, who's also diving with you while there's a Jormungandr diving on the enemy backline, that can work much, much better because the damage becomes a lot more relevant, as does the displacement. So that's the adjustment I'd be looking for. Speaking of adjustments, we've got the Thor ban. Very happy to see it. Put Panvich on something else, anything else. I don't care what it is. Just get him off of Thor.
Yeah, just the impact of those Anvil of Dawn engages, it was basically dictating how the fights were going, wasn't it? And I think the perfect image of that was during the right side Fennecs siege when Thor went up in the sky and it was almost like cats scattering away from a loud noise. All the backliners just completely disappeared and shedded away. But no, we are seeing the Olarum ban come through as well. We mentioned the sort of prevalence at the moment of magical ADCs. And one thing I love when you have multiple set games is that you get the in-game sort of like economy that goes on, or the meta. And by taking the Thor off the table, it's left open some picks that maybe would have been picked game 1 were they not banned away.
Yeah, we've actually got 2 adjustments. The Hebo being banned away as well. We discussed it a little bit. Really struggled in the early game, kind of as you'd expect. It's clearly still popped off in the late game, and not massively. He wasn't winning the fights by any means, but the damage is always going to be relevant if you get to that late stage. So I'm very happy to see they're getting rid of it. I'm curious to see what they're going to adjust to here. No sign of the Maui, by the way. We can effectively ignore that. Chronos being hovered is an interesting one. They're looking at magical ADCs. This was another potential option. They've picked it over the Freya, which I think is very interesting. Says a lot about how much they value the Freya. I do think it's more valuable than the Jingwei first pick, which is what they did last time. They picked it top 2. I think the Chronos offers a lot more, certainly in late game team fights. It offers more in terms of sieging, in terms of objective burn. It's actually quite safe in lane as long as you can get away with it. I like this adjustment. There are still a lot of strong picks up. We could see the Freya picked in response to this.
Yeah, and the rise of the magical ADCs, that Sol just doesn't seem to be getting a look in at the moment, which I found surprising. We do see the Jormungandr potentially being considered, though, and that's would it surprise you to see the Jormungandr actually picked up by the Fennecs this time?
Very interesting. It feels like, okay, you've had your go on the Yorm. It was okay. It wasn't bad. Now it's going to be Panvich's turn, and this would likely be a Panvich pick with also this Merlin lock. I love this Merlin pick for Farrakrick. A master on this character, undoubtedly, and especially with how safe Farrakrick's positioning was in game one, Merlin is just perfect for that because you have to position so well. But going back to this Yorm, I think it brings enough pressure to get through that laning phase. Is the dive as good? Probably not. But if anyone's going to make it work even better, I would trust Panvich to do that. But what we do now see is actually a switch in these two drafts completely. We see mid laners have decided to switch it up. We've got now Farrakrick on this Merlin. We've got the Tiamat on the other side. I think these are the two dominant mid laners at the moment. You're generally picking one or the other. You're building tablet. You're getting to the late game. You're chunking everyone, including tanks. I don't know which I prefer. I actually favour the Daffodils in their draft at the moment. I think they've got a little bit more of a well-rounded comp. But as you can see, the Fennecs have decided to pretty much draft what the Daffodils had last game, which is feels feels a little bit like they're egoing a little bit. They want to run this back and absolutely wallop them with this similar kind of comp.
Luckily, they've changed it up last second and gone for the Rama. And one thing I wanted to mention that you briefly touched upon it there was, we've played Smite Night for 5 seasons now. We're familiar with these players. And you mentioned Farrakrick picking up the Merlin. That is a signature pick. That's the kind of pick that if we were sat in front of a crowd at Worlds, they'd have just started cheering.
Yeah, and there are a number. Let's be fair for Farrakrick. There are a number of signature picks for this mid laner. I'm more than excited to see the Merlin. I think there's so many. You have to be so careful, as I mentioned with your positioning. You have to choose your stances very carefully. Which one are you going to get the optimal damage out of? Can you switch to that fire stance? Are you going to have enough CC to make the most out of it, or are you going to have to go for the sort of safer poke option in that ice stance? Depends if you're sieging or not. There's lots of complexities with this character, as there is with the Tiamat, and I really love to see it. But I also like this adjustment. I didn't like the Jingwei. Get the Rama in play because I think Rama is very good with the dive that they already have with this Jormungandr. That's kind of the extra bit of damage you need when you're diving as this serpent. You need that little bit of that extra damage from that Rama ultimate, and I think that might be just perfect for killing this backline.
And one thing we have to point out here is the Fennecs have actually banned away 4 junglers. That's targeted towards Archie Baker. It's got to be, hasn't it? If you're banning out 4 particular gods for one role. It's also worth mentioning the Daffodils actually passed a ban in this last phase here. And we see the Fafnir come in, Zats. And Fafnir is someone who pairs quite well with Rama in that early laning phase.
Yeah, I suppose so. Certainly, the trigger word if you see this team comp is like early Gold Furies, early Pyromancers, Fire Giants. They will go unbelievably quickly with a Fafnir and a coerced Merlin and Rama. You've got great zone control already with the Jormungandr. That is alarm bells ringing, and you need something to respond to that. Their steel isn't particularly inspiring. They don't have a lot of CC either to kind of disrupt them while they're all in these objective pits. This comp is slightly alarming me because I don't think they have enough to combat the sheer objective presence that the Fennecs have drafted so far. Nemesis will be perfectly fine at killing this Jormungandr throughout the game as long as you can do it before Pamich is able to get into that World Serpent. I don't really understand what Shiva does here. I just think Shiva is too easily countered by anti-heal, and other than that, doesn't really do anything as a bit of a CC bot. This comp concerns me greatly, and I much prefer the Fennecs at this stage, and I really like this Mercury to round off their draft as well.
Yeah, we saw the effectiveness of the jungle in the last game and how quickly they were getting around the map and getting involved in all lanes, and nobody does that better than Mercury. Of course, having the highest base movement speed, they can whiz around, they can get through the jungle quickly, even without speed buff. They're all over the place. And as you mentioned that you favour the Fennecs draft, is it just this team fighting and an objective secure that they've got in abundance here?
I think so. I just think it's not even the secure, it's the sheer shred that they have on not just Fire Giant and Gold Fury and any other objective you care to mention, but actually you get one good hammer stun onto anybody, you've got enough follow-up there and enough additional CC that everyone, whoever it is, even if it's Minokino on this Terra, even if it's the Shiver who has a lot of CC immunity, they are going to get locked down and burned so fast. I just think it's such a perfect comp. They got a little bit of everything. Their strengths are very clearly defined, and I don't think that the Daffodils were drafted enough to deal with any of what they've got.
Let's see if that is how it plays out as we head into game number 2. The Daffodils will be looking to take us to a game number 3, but standing in their way is the Floppy Fennecs, looking to finish this one off and start the season 2-0, which is not a bad way to begin season 5 of Smite Night. And Zats, we mentioned how important the early game is in the previous game, the level 1 and 2, and how well it sets you up for the first couple of waves. Is there a side here in this duo that you favour? Because I feel that's so important, is this early fight in duo lane.
I very rarely side with a Terra at this stage at level 1, but I think Fafnir is not great. We may even see Jacob leveling the underhanded tactics, the jump on the Fafnir, actually better for hitting multiple minions. Well, it's still going to be pretty slow. Zola obviously relying on the auto attacks. I think Terra and Kronos, you can group them up very, very nicely, and I actually might just about favour them, but those Astral Arrows are pretty effective as well, it's fair to say. We'll see who wins that race, and I love that this is where we're looking. This is the level 1, and yeah, it looks like just about edging that. This is the differential in the two duo lanes. This is the flashpoint of this early game, of this level 1, of this laning phase. We've seen they got a little bit of pressure. What can they do with it with the Terra and Kronos? Not a lot, but that suits both teams because these are very slow duo lanes, and actually it's going to come down to which jungler decides to gank first, because that is where all the pressure is going to be.
And junglers do not need any invitation to gank early in the game this season, do they? They are in lane before you've even got through your first set of potions, which is stark contrast to how Season 9 used to be, when you could get to around about 10-minute mark and you still didn't even know who the enemy jungler was. Yeah, definitely not the case anymore. And what you have to say is that the two junglers that we've got on show, Mercury and Nemesis, maybe two junglers that perhaps won't be quite as impactful until we hit that level 7 or 8 mark.
I guess that's true. The ultimates are not as impactful as soon as you get level 5, you just throw it down and you get a kill. Nemesis is okay with that. Sonic Boom is also fine with that. Their ganks are better, I would say, than a Humbats, than a Hebo at this early stage pre-level 5. But yeah, as you say, not quite the same impact upon getting that ultimate ability available. Still, you'd fancy their chances. Whoever gets here first is going to have a pretty easy time into these low-pressure duo lanes, as I mentioned. I guess it all comes down to this mid-lane squabble, this 2v2, and at the moment, Infrared UK definitely winning that trade, getting the beads and a ton of poke onto Farrakrick.
Yeah, that's a very good early beads to get as well, as it means that the very first ult will be clearly aimed at that mid lane, as we see a little battle going on here between the two junglers, Nemesis and Mercury, but it's not going the way that Fails would have liked. Do we have the slice and dice available to finish this one off? They're in hot pursuit. Surely just waiting for it to come off cooldown. Does get the slow, but it's not enough because Mercury, the ever slippery jungler, just manages to wriggle their way out of that one, and that could have actually been quite an impactful early kill.
Yeah, absolutely would have been. I like the idea. As soon as you know that special delivery is down, you can use that shield, and there's nothing Mercury can do about it. You either keep autoing and lose a ton of health off the reflect, and Jacob's got no dash here.
He doesn't have a dash, and what he does have is a Nemesis here as well, and Veyron does pick up that kill, and Jacob HL, that was almost like a long drawn-out mistake. That started contesting the buff against two members. Clearly the call came for Archie Baker to get themselves over there. They did, and they may get the purple buff as a reward as well.
And credit goes to Minokino with a perfectly placed wall to block that entrance. Couldn't have done it better. The blink in helps from Archie Baker, and they get a very nice body block off. It's a bit like what we saw in Game 1. The pressure is naturally with the Daffodils. Archie Baker clearly likes to make this early impact. The Nemesis is very good at that. Slows are very impactful at this point of the game. And Archie has one at the moment. He's going to have two available in the kit at level 5. I would expect to see a bit more pressure. Mercury, in response, is going to have to hyper farm a little bit. Much like game one, there's a lot of similarities we're seeing already. But we saw that as soon as the Fennecs hit that 10-15 minute mark, as soon as they decided, okay, now we want to win this game, now we want to fight everything, they just started winning everything. They were dominating these fights. They were taking the objectives. They were playing around them really, really nicely. As soon as they choose to hit the gas, the Daffodils need to either be so far ahead that it doesn't matter, or they just need to be ready with their vision, with their positioning. They need to be prepared for an all-in brawl once you hit that 10-15 minute mark.
Yeah, and we mentioned previously, Zats, that you said you weren't fancying the Shiva pick here. And actually, when you think about it, Shiva can't really do a great deal against this Jormungandr. Can't use the CC on either of their two abilities. So it's quite an interesting pick, and it may well be a bit of a tricky laning phase for Zero here.
I think that's normally the case with Shiva into anyone, I would say, but again, more breath on Zola.
Zola has to use the Astral Barrage defensively, and look who is waiting when he comes down. Looking to double dash, there it is, Slice and Dice is not going to be enough to take them down. Surely. This Nemesis is hunting, surely Zola doesn't get away, no they don't. Slice and Dice cuts them in half, and Zola falls down, and Archie Baker, similar to game number one, Zats has found good value in rotation to this left side.
Do you think that the Fennecs maybe shouldn't step up that far when Archie Baker's on the map? Or should I say, not on the map, because you know where this Nemesis is going, back over to dual lane. There's that invisible line that we talked about in game one. If you step across it and the jungler is nowhere in sight, they're probably coming for you. And again, Zola gets caught early on. It happened in game one. So many similarities. What I want to see now is, can the Daffodils leverage that into a bit more pressure elsewhere? Can Archie Baker start getting an impact in mid lane, in solo lane? Because we actually see the Fennecs actually have quite a substantial lead at this stage of the game, which is very surprising. Obviously, you get first blood, you've got 2 kills, mostly thanks to Archie Baker, but the Fennecs are in the lead, and that's credit, I think, to they're farming up very, very sensibly. They're not getting drawn too much into this fight. They know that Archie Baker is going to have a better early game, focusing down this dual lane. They're content with that because they know they can just stall this out for as long as they like. And then once you get into that sort of mid-game where they start grouping up, when Panvich can start rotating on this Jormungandr with what is another semi-global ultimate, that's when things get a little bit scary. So they're perfectly happy at this stage.
Yeah, and Fails has actually gone down the Shadow Drinker route, and I must say, as we approach, 2 months of year 10 of Smite, it's not an item I've really seen utilised yet by too many people. But when you think about it, Mercury, if you can finish someone off with that sonic boom, and then you're invisible to get away, they might be someone who could get something out of it.
I think it is an interesting item. The core stats on it are naturally very good on Mercury. And in fact, when we first saw the stats for this item, we're thinking, okay, who's going to use this? Mercury's going to be pretty good with this. Having a stealth after a kill, it's kind of like a cheap version of Bloodforge. It lets you either get away or it lets you actually carry on the fight, which Mercury really struggles to do once you've used that sonic boom, once you've used that special delivery. You kind of just throwing out auto attacks and hoping you don't die until your escape is back up. But with this item, it allows you to just skirt around the edge of the fight that little bit more. But I must say, it also means that it suggests to me that Fails are looking to fight, because Fails is expecting to get maybe a couple of picks at this stage, which is surprising. Otherwise, you'd have seen, the Merc go for this more traditional Golden Blade pickup, which of course helps you farm better, it helps you get through the early game, and I would fully expect to see that into this Nem, who's already got a bit of a lead going. But the fact that the Shadow Drinker has been picked up, Fails wants to fight now. I'm just not sure where we're going to see that aggression.
Well, we're seeing a bit of aggression in the mid lane as two teams looking to get that next engage, but it seems like it's not going to happen quite yet. And you have to say, what they did really well in game the Fennecs apps was this trio of support, mid and jungle rotating really well together, and it's something they've carried on here as well, as we do see a skirmish over the mid camps, but not going to go anywhere. And that's something that the Daffodils are going to have to break up, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think the first thing, if you're looking to break up this mid 3v3 trio, you've got Fails, who is clearly very willing to dive super far, whether it's the Hebo or the Mercury, and just try and trade out for a kill. I like that, but what they need to do actually is focus down Farrakrik a little bit more. on a little bit more of a susceptible mid lane, and I think it's easier to pick a Merlin, just force that flicker, then you can get on the back of this Merlin. They just need to kill Farrakut once. Get a number in that death column, because there wasn't one in game number 1, and that's going to be key. Get onto this Merlin a little bit more. Don't worry about fails, I think. But
Oh,
I say
boom!
that.
I saw it on the map! Sonic Boom from Fails
Typical.
caught Zero as they were looking to back underneath their tower. And we mentioned about this Mercury getting involved in things. Well, they certainly got involved there. But look at the counter rotation from the Dancin Daffodils. They are looking to put pressure not only onto Zolat, but onto their purple camp. Don't manage to save it, does Zolat. And the fight switches to the mid lane. But that came out of nowhere.
A 3-man gank. I really think this Shiver is the correct identification of who you're going to target early. I like that idea. We said about Fails getting this Shadow Drinker, looking for some early kills. We weren't sure where it was. Now I think about it, that Shiver's just perfect. Still stacking that Soul Eater. Not very tanky, not got enough sustain online quite yet. No defense at all. It's kind of a free gank. They rotate a lot of people to do it, but the key thing is they don't actually lose anything for it. We saw a big rotation, possibly around to Gold Fury. But again, Zolat just has to show face, actually steals his own Harpy away, so really doesn't lose anything at all. Certainly not Gold Fury, which was never really under threat. They get away with that massive rotation, which you say shouldn't really happen, but again, they did it so cleanly, and the rest of the team was so aware, and that comes down to comms, that comes down to shot calling. They were so aware of their position on the map and where the Daffodils might look to go next. They were ready for it, and so in the end of the day, they get a free kill onto Shiver, and they lose nothing in response.
They don't. As we look over at ADCs, not too much going on over there yet. And what we've got there, Zat, is two people that will be quite happy for nothing to be happening yet because they are not online. But when they are, they're going to do damage late game. They're going to have a huge impact. And it could well come down to who can get the most out of these late game hyper carries.
And it always feels like you're going to favour a Chronos come that late game against almost anyone. The fact that Veyron has a 2-level lead over the Rama, who, if anyone's going to have a slight advantage, I'd probably give it to Rama, isn't looking to stack, has the Assy and the Executioner online. So fighting isn't a bad option, but actually, speaking of fighting, Veyron's already in mid to lane.
Crick has to use their beam, just means they can't do anything about the slows coming out from Archie Baker, and they clean Farrakut away very, very quickly. And that is value from your jungler, recognising straight away that those beats were down. Dancin Daffodils looking to put some pressure on here. There is no counter rotation coming over from Zolat or Panbit, so this tower may be free to take, but they don't. The Dancin Daffodils do disengage, and that, Zat, was an extremely quickly dispatched Merlin.
Yeah, and that's the power of the Nemesis. I love this build that Archie's got the Jotuns into the Hydras. A lot of burst damage at this stage that you don't really expect. We're going to see a little bit of skirmish, and Fails actually taking a ton of damage, but now Panbitch could be in trouble.
Yeah. Romancer is the scene for this one. Jacob gets caught as 4 members of the Dancin Daffodils look to close in. Jormungandr can do what they can with the disruption, but it's not going to be enough. Archie Baker once again looking to close down. Zero gets the final hit, but Archie Baker did all the damage, but Zero gets thrown underneath the tower, takes possibly 1 or 2 extra tower hits. The Native Light and Fails once again, gets a kill onto the solo laner. So kills traded out between the two teams. No map objective falls down. Looks like they're going to be rotation over towards the Gold Fury, but they may well be coming over for Zolat.
I'm not really a fan of that fight. Again, Zero gets put down once again, does get a kill onto Jacob, I suppose, but you're not really concerned about Fafnir falling behind. I do want to point out, what on earth is Jacob building into here? Is it Tablet of Destiny? It is a tablet, which I've never seen on Fafnir. I've certainly never seen it on a support Fafnir. I guess we'll see how this goes. You got to be on point with those hammers, I suppose. I did also wonder, actually, and I wonder if you know the answer to this, Kara. Does Coerce, which does proc magical item effects, does that proc Tablet of Destinies if a coerced teammate hits someone with an ability? That might be some secret tech that we haven't seen yet, and I'm intrigued to see if Jacob has tried this and is going to potentially pull this one off.
Well, I'm delighted you've asked me a question that I don't know the answer to on stream there,
You're
Zats.
very
Thanks for that one. Someone who very rarely plays mages or Fafnir, but thank you for putting me on the spot there. I actually don't know the answer to that. We have seen, though, haven't we, Zats? There are some interesting item effects this season, things that proc items that you perhaps wouldn't have traditionally thought so. So maybe we'll keep an eye on that one, see how quickly those tablet stacks go up there. Veyron has to rewind away from that one. Archie Baker doing so much damage onto Fails, though. How was this Nemesis chunking so hard so soon? Zolat has to use the Astral Barrage, but it does nothing more than delay. Dancin Daffodils decide not to punish. Now they're potentially looking at Gold Fury. Don't know if there's enough for them to take this here, as Fails and Zolat are on the scene, but Archie Baker is enough of a present to zone the two away from this. Gold Fury has been started up. It's not a safe one, though. The Fennecs are fully aware of this one. Mino Kino taking quite a lot of damage, but look who is on the backline. Infrared is here as well. This one could go either way. This Gold Fury is up for grabs. The Dancin Daffodils do get it, though. The Floppy Fennecs are looking to punish, though. They're looking for the pursuit. Archie Baker does use the beads, does get caught, though, and they are going to fall here as Farrakrick punishes Archie Baker for lingering perhaps just a little bit too high up when zoning there. And that's a good pick for the Dancin Daffodils there.
Yeah, a little bit surprising that they allow that to happen, the Fennecs. They're there for so long, and what I love is Minokino plays around the sustain and just kites the Gold Fury. We see it a lot. Generally, you're not allowed to get away with it, sort of positioning like that, but with the Chronos damage coming through, surely Zero can steal this. No.
The steal was there, but what they do instead is steal away Zeros as Fails once again. 3 kills already on to the solo laner. Don't get the Pyromancer. So Floppy Fennecs, after seeing the Gold Fury go down, retaliates by taking the Pyromancer and the solo laner.
And also, the fact that they managed to kill off Archie Baker, that's actually the biggest win of all of them. This Nemesis has been so strong, and Archie, to their credit, has been playing around the power spikes. The Jotun's Wrath, the Hydra's Lament, I mentioned it a bit earlier, but that is such a strong combo of damage that you can do. You throw out your 2, your auto, your dash, your auto, your dash. There's so much technical play that you can do with this Nemesis with auto attack cancelling. The damage is just unreal at this stage. You can't deal with it, but what's even more impressive to me is that Fails, after getting 1 kill onto Archie Baker, is suddenly a level up, has a couple of stacks of Rage, is now going into Deathbringer or a Wind Demon.
Rage, potentially.
Yeah, we already got the Rage online. That's the crazy thing. This Mercury's already come online and is just going to keep swinging more and more. That is a bit of a concern for me, because out of nowhere, suddenly Archie Baker's a level down, despite a fantastic performance so far. But this is what we saw in game number 1. It's almost identical. They just decided to press the gas pedal, and suddenly they're winning every fight. And we haven't quite seen that yet, but they are more than capable of just switching it on like that. And that's because they're farming really efficiently. You've got level leads across the board. I don't know how you find that. This is maybe one way of doing it.
Oh, big blink from Archie Baker onto Farrakrick. Just chasing down this mid lane at every single fight, and Infrared UK does pick that one up. But again, Archie Baker did all the damage and started the fight off. Jacob is in dragon form, but he's got 4 people looking to slay this one, and the dragon is going to fall down. Zeros manages to get the kill, but Pamvich is rotated over. Jormungandr looking to do his defensive duty. Minokino escapes by an absolute slither of health. And Pamvich looking to just throw out some damage on the still engaging. But Zolat, while that's going on, we got a solo kill. First solo kill of the set over in the ADC. And Zats has action all over the map at the moment.
I don't know how that ever happens. We're going to see. Whoa! Burn damage from Infrared. Fails goes down. Infrared double kill. Diving the tier 1 tower, and he's going to get alive on that final tower shot. What on earth is happening? We've got massive kills in the mid lane that have absolutely turned this game on the head. A solo kill just to help out the Fennecs a little bit, which, by the way, 2 levels down and both relics up for Veyron. That should never, ever happen. I don't know what happened there, but Zolat turning that around from absolutely nothing. This game has sparked into life. And despite the kill differential, Infrared getting a nice double kill, the Fennecs are still got a really solid lead. And it just feels like, even though they're dropping these kills and dropping these objectives, they're just farming so efficiently that they feel like they're constantly in control.
Yeah, and Infrared has woken up for sure in this one now with the two big double kills, and they've been looking for that, haven't they? Because Fabric has been hard focused by Archie Baker. I think it's fair to say every engage onto that mid lane, there's a blink. They're looking to get beads, and they punish it. And now Infrared is looking to capitalize on this as well. As we see Jacob potentially at risk of a gank here over in Joe, but not quite the case. And that, it's only a matter of time until we start seeing fights around the big objectives. And, I always look at the secure in situations like this. And there's pretty good secure on both sides, isn't it? So you can't roll the dice on these, tentative objectives. You've got to commit or you risk losing it.
Yeah, and you have to absolutely commit to one call or the other. That's the key. Are we going for the fight, or are we going for the objective burn and then massive disengage? At the moment, we've got a big squabble over this Gold Fury. Solo laners have rotated. Infrared going to jump in, actually. They have all the pressure at the moment. Look at that damage from Tiamat.
What was that hit Pamvich? So much damage.
Mad.
Tablet absolutely chunking health away from the solo laner, forces the solo laner away, which means that he's now got a 5v4 in favour of the Dancin Daffodils. But as I say, there's so much secure on the side of the Fennecs that you have to be confident that you're going to take an objective before you start this one up. Both sides posturing. Have they missed an opportunity to go in there, being a solo laner down?
I think possibly, but the fact that really levels are not favouring them at this stage. So even though they do force this level 18 Jormungandr out, who by the way also has full damage, so no wonder that Pamvich took so much poke. Double book tree now into the Chronos Pendant. Pamvich is very, very scary, so they did a good job of forcing that big, scary solo laner out. But on the other hand, you've got a very, very small and not very scary solo laner in this Shiver, who I just think isn't offering anything at this point. There's a bit of healing, sure. There's a bit of setup, and there's actually quite a lot of setup. I like the Stone of Binding pickup. That's going to help your teammates if they're able to follow up on this Shiver CC, but it just feels like you actually need Zero to keep farming up, to keep getting levels, because you're going to really struggle to have any kind of impact, because this backline of Merlin and Rama is going to shred you so quickly. Farakrik already has the Divine Rune online. They've got enough in their arsenal to burn down Zero before he's ever able to make an impact. That's a big concern for me, and that is a big reason why they then don't feel confident to pull that Gold Fury, despite, as I say, winning that initial trade on Pamvich.
Yeah, and Zero actually gone the Prophetic Cloak route, but item number 3, which can slow it down a little bit, it's almost hard enough to stack when you get it first, so there's going to have to be some engages over the next sort of 5-10 minutes or so to really get value out of that item when we get into the mid-game. But the solo lanes have basically traded roles here, haven't they, Zat? It was full damage Yorm for the Daffodils game 1, full defense for the Fennecs, and now they've swapped.
Yeah, I will say that...
whoa! Veyron has to use the rewind though when he's caught between two, but Archie Baker is over here as well. But they take so much damage quickly from that Rama. The Astral Barrage has been used, but I'm sure it's only due to delay the potential engage that is coming from the Dancin Daffodils. Mino Kino is here, but there isn't any follow-up damage. Zola is starting to swing now though. Those crits really starting to proc. Veyron cleans away Jacob. They're supposed to be a tank. They get absolutely blasted away. Dancin Daffodils do get the pick. Now potentially looking at Gold Fury, but Floppy Fennecs are here as well. They're not going to let this Gold Fury go down for free. It started up. May it be a bait. We've got Merlin lurking. We've got Mercury looking to come around the back. Is there a big Sonic Boom being lined up here potentially? As we see Mino Kino take a lot of damage. But this one is just dragging out. That's Pamvich looking to get away, and that full damage. Jormungandr just about escapes by the skin of their tail.
Unbelievable. This is the problem with this full damage bin now. Fails is on a friendly ward, so they don't know about this. One major look could steal this.
It could indeed. They do look to take it, but it's not going to be enough. The Dancin Daffodils do secure it. May not have been safe, but they do get it. And Fails is now going to have to sprint away from this one. But luckily, he is the god of speed, and they can get away. Does get the beat before they go, though. Mino Kino takes quite a lot of damage, as does Archie Baker. And the Floppy Fennecs looking to re-engage onto the Daffodils after losing the Gold Fury. And this one is just being dragged over to Pyro.
And the crazy thing is, they still have a gold lead. I just don't know how they're doing this so cleanly. Pyromancer, again, it's going to be contested. I don't know who's going to get this.
The Dancin Daffodils do once again secure it. I'd say they've rolled the dice twice, and they get a 6 twice, but Mino Kino gets caught by the Sonic Boom. Does Fails have the speed to catch them up? The healing is coming out from this Shiva. Oh, and Fails goes down. Archie Baker stops the Mercury from landing the final blow that would have finished it off. And the Dancin Daffodils are now looking to re-engage, but look what's going on in the back line as there's another person falling down. Jacob drops down to Veyron. Look at the Dancin Daffodils' health. Zola does pick up a kill. Zola gets a double kill. Farrakrik picks one up as well, and there's kills being traded all over the map. But the Floppy Fennecs come out 3 versus 2.
Criminal. The Zola doesn't fall there. I don't know how they don't have enough damage. I think Zola gets a nice crit. There's a bit of Farrakrik damage as well. Unbelievable. I'm staggered, and I can't believe that they get so unlucky with that team fight. They play it so nicely. Zola is left to swing a little bit too long, gets a bit too much poke before they're able to lock down that armor. Or I thought they locked down their armor, but they didn't quite have the damage, unbelievably. That final shot from Infrared UK just off the mark with that Primordial Onslaught. One more beam would have done it. Very unlucky, very narrow margins, and suddenly it meant there's a massive kill swing. Weirdly, the gold lead seems to have stayed pretty stable, if not even gone slightly in favour of Daffodils. Again, that comes down to the Pyromancer. They are getting these objectives. Veyron also getting some really nice picks off in the distant fights. That's their win condition at this stage. They do need to play around this Chronos a little bit more. We saw a glimpse of it a little bit earlier with the Shiver setup, which I was criticising, but when you've got that double knock-up into a Chrono stun, you're getting Stone of Binding passive onto them. They're getting absolutely shredded by this full-on mage damage build from Veyron. Full power, lots of pen in the build. That's pretty scary to deal with if you're caught by that even a tanky support like Jacob, even this not very tanky Panvich is not going to last long if you are caught by that combination. So they need to play around that. They need to watch that Chronos, make sure their spacing is correct. The trouble is, it's hard to zone this Chronos when you just kind of die to it. Panvich can't tank it. Who else is dying? Fails? Maybe if Fails can get the kill before that rewind gets off, that's your best chance. Otherwise, Veyron is just going to end up living too long and doing too much damage in these fights. That needs to be the priority. That needs to be the shift for the Fennecs.
Yeah, and as the minutes tick on, I guarantee you that Veyron will be climbing up those player damage charts that we can see on the bottom left there. Currently sitting at 13k. They will be very near the top shortly, I'm sure, as the Dancin Daffodils do have the numerical advantage here, as Farrakrik is just securing a red buff, and we're once again in that situation, 2 teams posturing around the Fire Giant, just waiting for someone to make that mistake or get that big engage.
It's exactly the same as game 1. It's a mirror match. They're all grouping around this Fire Giant. 26 minutes in. It feels like it should still be earlier in the game, but we're well along in terms of our builds. Most people having completed their 5 items, looking to get their starters upgraded. That's going to be key. Can you get that starter upgrade before this next FG fight? There's a couple already completed for the Rama, for the Merlin. This Tainted Amulet pickup for Panvich. Again, it's more damage, and also you're getting more sustain off this. I quite like this pickup, especially into the Terror. Nemesis and Shiver all have lifesteal. Kronos has a little bit of lifesteal with that Polynomicon, with that Spirit of the Magus. I really like this pickup. We'll see how it works in tandem with the Divine Ruin, but the question is, can Panvich actually live long enough in these fights? Can you get into that World Serpent Ultimate before you get burned down? Because, as I say, you are still dying very, very quickly.
And 2 mages on show here in the Merlin and the Tiamat just have so much poke potential, don't they? You can just be caught by one ability and that's it. You have to step away, you have to back off, and that's all it can take for one of these fights to just trigger into action, as Infrared takes a little bit too much damage, has to sort of hover around the back. Looks like Zeros is going in though, but they've engaged onto Jacob. Archie Baker hits with a slice and dice, but it's not going to be enough to force anything into action, and that's the Fire Giant dance waltzes on.
And you've got to say that that's going to favour the team with naturally a lot more sustain. They're going to be beating edge of the Pyromancer. The Terror has been popped.
Terrell has been popped, and that's usually the sign to engage. Pamvich goes into the ultimate, looking to dive onto who they can, but there's not too much follow-up from the rest of the Floppy Fennecs. Dancin Daffodils have just regrouped and backed away. And that's it. The fight is disengaged. Archie Baker makes me eat my words, though. Once again, dashes in, blanks in onto Farrakrick. And this is just, we're being taunted, Zat. We're the ones being baited into a fight.
And finally, I guess they just got position eventually. Oh, and actually, they get the Pyromancer. They are aware of this. The Daffodils are on their way. They know this is happening, but look at the burn coming out on this Fire Giant.
Incredible. Archie Baker and Veyron lurking as well. This will be quite the steal if they go for it. It's not safe. Dancin Daffodils do steal it away. They steal it under the noses of Floppy Fennecs. Not looking to hard re-engage the Fennecs, though. They recognise, you know, sometimes teams can go in hard there, can't they, after losing a Fire Giant, but they recognise just cut our losses and back away. And Zats, what did I say? You've got to be so sure you're going to take an objective with these comps. And the Fennecs were made to pay.
So that's the first time in this entire set that I think the Fennecs, they straight up make the incorrect decision. Their burn is undoubtedly very, very good. Look how quickly that Fire Giant went down with the crits from the Mercury, with the Merlin shred in that fire stance, Zola with a Coerce on top as well. The damage is crazy, but your secure is not great. Now, it's not great on the side of Dancin Daffodils as well, but Infrared UK still had all the damage available. And actually, speaking of damage, Zola is going to take one hefty chunk. They're going to push down for this tier 2. Zero gets stunned out, and that's probably going to be all we see. I think now they need to play it safe, clean up the rest of these towers, make sure you spend your gold, because they've been fighting for a long time. They need to make this slight gold advantage actually count. This is the first time they've actually been a tiny bit ahead in the game. They have the advantage. Now they need to make sure they're actually playing around that, get your items online, finish up these tier 2 towers. You're probably not going to make a Phoenix push with this standard FG, and that's fine. They just need to recognize that, play it sensibly, and they'll be absolutely in a good spot going into this next enhanced Fire Giant.
And they're not looking to spend their gold in hand, they're looking to add to it as the Primal Fury is being started up by Archbaker and Mino Kino. Floppy Fennecs went nothing to do with this, so they are going to significantly add to that gold in hand. Zats, we saw the pings on the map just before that, sorry, just after that last team fight that suggested Gold Fury was the call. Surely now they're back, buy full items, and then they're going to look to run it down left.
Yeah, I think so. We'll see some items finished up. We'll see what Infrared can get. We've got a full Rod Tahuti and its glyph upgrade for Veyron, getting the Meteor glyph. Sure, you might as well at this stage. Veyron will be swinging. Again, if you are caught by this Shiver Kronos combo, plus there might be a Nemesis ult on top of you, you are going to die unbelievably quickly. The protection shred coming out of them is so much. The irony is, of course, you don't need much protection shred, because it's only really Fafnir that has built any kind of prots this game. As I say, Pamvich has gone full power build. I like it, and it's the fact that Pamvich has only died once is a testament to this player and how well they're positioning and how careful they're having to be with that World Serpent, with that ultimate. But you've got to say, it's on tenterhooks at this stage, because it really comes down to both teams have the potential to just one-shot anyone on the map, including Zero, if we're not careful.
Yeah, Zero in a position they perhaps are going to regret very shortly. Looking to come around the back of the tier 2, and they take a lot of poke damage with very little follow-up from the rest of the Daffodils. Archie Baker is looking to take that mid lane tower just to split the guys up, to stop them being able to fully defend the tower. They are going to be able to take it, and what is going to happen in response on the left side, Dancin Daffodils hovering around the tier 2 tower, just letting Archie Baker push it up mid, still have Fire Giant buff, but not for very long. And it looks like that may be all they get for now. But Zats, one thing we want to pick up there is that Infrared has actually picked up a mantle of Discord. They are obviously a little bit concerned about potential dive coming out from the Floppy Fennecs.
And absolutely, who can blame Infrared for wanting to get that little bit of extra props online? Also going to cap out that CDR, which is a nice look, I think. I always appreciate an extra defense item. Part of me also thinks, yes, you've got this mantle of Discord. You could also just upgrade your relics. That might help a little bit. I digress, though. It's perfectly fine. There's so much dive coming out. It's going to help you into fails. If you can get one mantle stun, that could just be enough to get you out. Because as we said, the damage coming out from this back line of the Dancing Daffodils is so massive. It comes down to tiny margins, and having an extra surprise stun that maybe someone like Fails or Pamvich isn't expecting, that can switch a fight just like that. It's those little things that I really like to see maybe impact this next fight or two. But for now, we're going to get back into it. Fire Giant is about to drop, which means, of course, that it's going to be available straight away. So here's the position now. They weren't able to get that tier 2 on left. Shiver took a little bit too much poke. Now they're starting to group back around this FG. Who can get the proper positioning? Who can get the deep wards in the enemy jungle? Because that's going to set you up nicely for this enhanced Fire Giant. This one will win you the game.
Yeah, and one thing's that they may not have got a Phoenix. They may not have got that tower on left. What Dancin Daffodils have got over the last 5 minutes is Veyron's build fully online, and that is going to have a huge impact in these late game team fights, because Chronos can just be so devastating in this current meta.
Yeah, we're seeing it's hard to get in sort of range for this Chronos. You have to be actually quite up close and personal to get any real damage off, because you really need to hit that stun to have any kind of effect. But when you are in that range, it's very dangerous. This will one-shot with this build. A Rod proc, as it were, combined with a Poly proc and a Magus passive on top of that, you are going to get one-shot. They have to be very careful with their positioning. Jacob hits a nice stun just to deter that. The poke actually is coming out quite nicely, and they have enough anti-heal to keep Minokino fairly low, despite this the fact there's plenty of healing coming out. Again, it's just fine margins. But as I say, you're always going to favour the team with more healing. It doesn't matter how much anti-heal you've got, you cannot fully anti-heal them, because they can just step back, take 10 seconds to heal it all back up, and you've lost nothing essentially. Whereas on the other hand, poking is far more valuable if you can get it onto this Merlin, onto Panvich especially, because they don't have any sustain. But there's the ult from Archie.
There it is, and this little fight is now blown into full-blown skirmish, up into the sky. Goes Zola with the Astral Barrage, connects onto 2, connects onto 3. Farrakrik picks up 0 in the backline, and Fails has come alive now. Farrakrik gets a double kill, Jacob gets a kill as well, and the Floppy Fennecs just clean the Dancing Daffodils off the map. Infrared UK is the last one left standing, and they are being chased hard by members of the Floppy Fennecs. They don't want the Fire Giants, they want the mid laner, and they're going to get both. They fall down. Infrared, Fire Giant is going to be next, and that is a huge victory for the Floppy Fennecs.
And that all starts from an engage from Archie Baker. Zeros follows up as well. They try and get onto Zola, who has both relics available. And surely not going to die. No! Okay, it doesn't matter. It's fine.
Oh, Pambit, no! What have they done? They fall down to the Fire Giant. I'm sure, as a whole, the Floppy Fennecs won't mind too much as they get a deicide and 3 members with Fire Giants. But come on, Pamvich, you're better than that.
Yo, imagine if Pamvich had any procs whatsoever in this build. Like one item with a tiny bit of health or procs and you live there. Imagine building full damage. But they don't care. That fight went so well for them. They managed to get all 5 members, a big deicide, EFG. Suddenly it swung back in their favour. They're going to increase this gold lead now. They're going to finish up their builds, get some pots online. It's all up to them now. They'll want to make some Phoenix pushes straight away. They're not going to go for the tier 2s first. They're going to go back, spend their gold, get their items, and then rush down one of these Phoenixes. I don't mind which they go for. It's just incredible how quickly that turns. And as we said, it was all from the Daffodils engage. But Zola is able to bait so long by just jumping up into the sky, using relics properly, and there's nothing you can do about that. You have to sit and wait for 3 to 5 seconds, and that cannot ever be good if you're sitting waiting for a carry to come back down so you can kill them, because the fight was over by the time Zola had landed. Fails did some unbelievable work in the backline. Didn't quite have enough to kill off Infrared, but did so much work. Shadow Drinker passive might have helped a little bit as well. And all the while, Farrakrick was just swinging for free damage, not really touched in that fight. And that for me is the big problem. Farrakrick going unchecked in these team fights. You can't let Merlin ever do that.
No, and Floppy Fennecs are going to get a lot from this Fire Giant. They've got Oni waves in all lanes as well. They're going to take a couple of tier 2, certainly left and mid, maybe even right as well. But they might have bigger things on their mind as they look to take the Phoenix on left side. Dancin Daffodils are going to have to put up a defense like they did in game number 1. But I don't know how much they can do against a team with enhanced Fire Giant. But they actually pushed back the Fennecs for now. But they're going to have to do this a few more times if they want to keep this bird alive.
That bird is already down to 40% off of their first push. And they've got plenty more in them. They can take their time over this. Again, you don't have fire minions to really pressure another side of the map, but it doesn't really matter. Eventually this will fall. It's going to take a lot of defense. And actually, Veyron getting absolutely shredded. Dies to fail.
Oh, there was a special delivery, and it was signed, sealed, and delivered to Veyron. Infrared goes down as well as Pamvich, the World Serpent, is munching their way through the backline. The Floppy Fennecs do get the Phoenix on left side. They're not quite going to push hard for Titan yet. May just be a little bit too tanky with still 2 tier 2 towers left standing. But Zats, the Fennecs are in a great position here.
I really don't see how you can fight back into us. They will clean up all these Phoenixes, I think. I understand that you don't want to end there. The fact that you don't have really anyone to tank FG unless you're Jacob, and you know, with Archie Baker still on the map, you can just burn down the Fafnir, but they are actually going to go for it here.
Archie Baker's the one who gets burned down. There was failed lands a couple of devastating left and right hooks.
Bye-bye.
2 crits, and this Titan is going to fall down, and the Floppy Fennecs are going to take game number 2. They're going to take the set, and they are going to go straight to the top of Smite Night Division 1.
And thoroughly deserved. They played that really, really cleanly. Daffodils look great. They put up a spectacular fight in the early game. The pressure from jungle was excellent and very well placed from Archie Baker. Infrared did a good chunk of damage as well as you'd expect on this Tiamat. I think the problem was we saw a glimpse of how you could set up for Veyron on this Chronos. The problem is as soon as the Fennecs started fighting into the Daffodils and started diving them, it was impossible for Veyron to get off any damage because there was no setup in range for this Chronos, and that was the problem. They stopped this Chronos being allowed to do any damage, and in the end, a quite low number in the end, which is a bit disappointing when you look at how well they were farming. I just think it comes to the fact that the Fennecs were able to suddenly, again, switch it on just like that. They started diving the back line really, really effectively. Their poke was excellent as well. They did not care about sustain going through. And in the end, they just beat them down and kept going and going and going until they broke the base. And with the amount of objective shreds, they were always going to finish that very, very quickly. But very well deserved. Very impressive performance from them. They go top of our top league.
They do indeed. They sit atop of the tree. And that's one thing, as you know, we like to do here at Smite Night is pick our casters player of the set. Now, I'm going to go first because I think it's a very obvious choice for me. As a solo laner myself, I have to say that Pamvich's performance over both games just got so much out of the Thor in that first one and really brought the full damage Jormungandr to life in game number 2 with 11 assists involved in the majority of things that were going on. So, Pamvich, you get my shout for player of the match.
Yeah, I think that's super fair. I'm glad you picked Pamvich because that means I can pick someone else, and I really am quite torn. I'm actually going to give it. I'm going to give it to Zolat. I think the way that Zolat was able to kind of bait himself really, really nicely with clever relic usage, got off plenty of damage, was able to bait with that Rama roll, and indeed with the Ishtar as well. I think a very, very impressive performance, and it allowed some of the ire to be taken away from Farrakrick, who did a lot of damage, as you'd expect, was kind of free casting, but I think that's because all the attention was on Zola. They think, okay, Zola is maybe an easier target. We'll focus that Rama down. It never actually worked for them, and I think credit must go to Zola there for just positioning well enough that you bait yourself to draw the ire, to draw them in, to draw zero in, but just safe enough that you're still close to your backliner and you're still allowing the rest of your team to flourish. So that's going to be my MVP, but they all deserve it, frankly.
Well, there you go. We can't give it to everyone, I'm afraid. So Zolat and Pambic get our nominations for Caster's Player of the Set. So that actually wraps up our proceedings for the evening, and it also wraps up game week number 2 of season 5 of Smite Night. The participation this season has been absolutely brilliant. That brings 2 full game weeks to a close, where every single fixture has been played. So thank you so much to all of the players who've been involved so far this season. Game week number 3 is out tomorrow, as will be your team of the week and all of the fixtures for the final game of this current split. So I have been I23 Caragold. Thank you for tuning in this evening. I've been, of course, joined by Zats in chair number 2. And of course, the legendary Judas Priestley has been running production behind the scenes as well. And Zats, I'm going to give you the final say of this evening's cast.
Thank you very much, Cara. I have to say that this is exactly what we hoped for from the top 2 teams in the top division of the Smite Night League. I'm sure we'll see them clash again at some point. I hope we see more of the same. We just want to see all these crazy picks, these shiver solos, these fantastic performances from Farah Crick, these iconic players. It's a pleasure to watch. It's a pleasure to cast. And thank you to everyone for being a part of that and letting us do this, because this is amazing to do. Thank you, everyone. Well done to both teams. GG all.